This is my newest design for a hidden blade. I call it my Romano blade. Now, depending on how handy you are or how motivated you are, you can either head over to my Shapeways store and pick up a kit, which I'll be showing you how to put together and finish here in a moment, or you can go over to my Etsy store and you can buy a fully finished one made by me that I'll ship to you that will look just like what you see right here on camera. Now you have three options. You can either get the right-handed version, which is what you're seeing now, or you can get the left-handed version, which is a mirror of this, or you can pick up a pair and you'll save yourself some money. So these are the pieces that you'll receive with your kit. You'll receive the main body, the first tier, the second tier, a collection of locks that are all connected together, and then a little back plug piece. And if you're missing any of these parts from your kit, there's a link in the description where you can contact Shapeways. And also be mindful that there's an angle here, here, and here. They should all line up. If you receive your kit and it looks like this, where these angles line up and yet you can see there's a notch cut out of this one, they've given you the wrong piece. You need them all to match like this. So the first step, like all my kits, that you need to go through is you need to clean out these parts. And so the best way to do that is basically to take a toothbrush and to basically just brush all these parts off, and then just do a little bit of assembly by putting the parts kind of assembling them together to help mash out all of the extra 3D printing dust. The way these parts are made is they're made using a process called SLS, selective laser sintering, which basically just melts a bunch of this powdered plastic selectively to create the actual parts. And so you have to clear out all that extra stuff that gets kind of stuck in the nook and crannies. So go ahead and do that process. The next thing you're going to need to do is clear out some holes that we're going to put pins through during the assembly process. The best way I found to do that is simply cut off a little piece of just a normal paper clip and go ahead and chuck that into a drill, or in my case, my good old trusty Dremel. And then just go ahead and clear out these holes. They're very easy to find because they all have fillets or rounds that lead into the holes. So there's two sets of holes on this particular piece here, the first tier, one here and one here, and you can see even without power I can just kind of clear that hole out just a little bit and then through there like so. So the next holes are in this main body piece. You have a hole back here right in the center which will line up with your plug piece. Simply put this piece in here and spin it through, and then do the accompanying side. And then the next two holes which line up are these two little front tabs here, which the front lock attached to. And so for these, you can go ahead and grind through or just run a little power. Now then, to match with those, you have a hole that goes right through the middle of this back spacer piece, and it runs all the way through. Now watch your fingies. Out, and then there's a series of holes in these parts. There's three of them combined together. There's one hole in each of these blade lock pieces, one here, one here, and then there's holes just above those right here which line up with the holes you already cleared out for those pieces like so. And the last hole, in order to access, you need to separate these pieces apart. So just take a pair of clippers and you'll see the little connection pieces that you just need to clip off like so, and then you clip off the vestigial bits left over, and then there's a hole that runs right down the center of this piece all the way through. Next thing you need to do is get yourself some sandpaper. I'm using 220 grit extra fine sandpaper, and go ahead and sand down all of these pieces. Now this will do a couple things. One, it'll smooth out any of the 3D printing texture, the kind of layered Aztec temple features that you'll find on 3D printed parts, and it will also just smooth everything out and give you a little bit more room when we go to add our finishing, so that everything continues to run smoothly. So go ahead and sand all the parts with your 220, but be careful around these raised details here. You don't want to sand too much, because you might just sand those details right off. Next step is test assembly. You can technically skip this step and go into finishing and then just do final assembly, but I highly recommend you do a test assembly to make sure everything is running first. So what you're going to need is some more paper clips. So the first step is grab your first tier and drop that into the main housing. Make sure that the notch that's on the back of this part is on the bottom here, so it looks all pretty on top. And then take your blade, make sure that this slant matches with that one, drop it in there, and everything should be sliding nice and smooth from before. Take your back piece, your little plug, and stick this guy back in here. Then you simply take a pin and you can push that all the way through those pieces, and done. And then what you would normally do is go ahead and pull that back just so it's flush, and then take a pair of clippers and cut that flush. But since we're just doing test assembly, I'm going to leave a good amount of excess here so I can pull that back out later. So with that guy in place, you can see closed, open, everybody's running well. Take your front door, line up those pins, all the little holes, and then go ahead and run another paper clip pin all the way through all 4 of those. And I use these as a pair of pliers, there we go. So that goes all the way through. You'd go ahead and pull this guy back flush and clip him so it is flush and nice, so nothing's sticking out. That way this guy can open all the way up. With this opened all the way up, make sure that this falls in and lines up and locks into that channel. Everything's good. And then the last 2 pieces you need to put in are your little locks. So the way these work is, if you look closely, there is notches that are cut all the way through, and then there's a notch that runs here. Those need to point towards the outside, because that's where the rubber bands are going to run. So go ahead and place one of those in there. Get yourself another piece of paper clip, and then run this through both pieces like so. Go ahead and again push that back flush, and then use a pair of clippers, clip that guy off flush, and then do the same on the other side. Now with everything in place, if you manually push these 2 in and push down your main lock, that should lock everything down. And then if you pull this guy up, everything should drop back in. Now the thing you should check also is to make sure that these move smoothly and freely. If you're feeling like there's some friction or they're gummed up, you're going to need to sand these surfaces, these top surfaces here of these individual locks. But if they're moving smooth and everything's easy, then you're good to go. So what you can do is then go ahead and disassemble everything. And then to disassemble it, just take a paper clip and push out your pins. So to finish up this kit, I use foil tape. I've covered this in a lot of other videos. It's basically a giant aluminum foil sticker. You can get it at hardware stores. It's usually by the high temperature ducting, and the key is to get the economy variety or the cheapest variety, because it has the thinnest, non-rubberiest adhesive, and that works best. So what you need to do is go ahead and peel yourself off a chunk of this that it's about the same length as the piece you're going to cover. And since there's a lot of foil tape work on this particular kit, I'm going to try to go over this in detail. So what you want to do is go ahead and remove the backing from this piece, like so. and then go ahead and peel and stick this straight down onto the surface you're going to be foil taping. And then using just your hands, go ahead and start pressing this down. The key to working with foil tape is you're working with aluminum, and aluminum only wants to form so quickly. So the key is to kind of work it in stages. And so it will form kind of nice and initially, and then you increase your pressure both by pushing harder or by switching over to tools, and that will help you push it down into the very key details. So let's get all these guys stuck down like so. Now then, the next tool, and a very important tool in my repertoire, I'm using, this is technically a soldering tool, but it's very similar to clay forming tools. You could also use the sides of pens. You can also use like a mechanical pencil if it doesn't have any lead in it. What you need is basically something that's plastic and that has smooth edges, and that will help you work the tape down. So using the side of this, I'm going to go ahead and start pressing this tape down into the deeper recesses of the part. Now again, the key is there's sunken areas here. If I was to just go ahead and take this part and just immediately mash down, I'd rip straight through the foil tape. So what you have to do is you have to apply pressure, but gently, so you can slowly work the tape down and into these more deep recesses. And so you just continue this process all around on these edges. And again, the deeper the recesses, the more you're asking the tape to deform, the more gentle you're going to have to be. You're going to have to slowly work that tape down in there, because ideally you don't want to rip the tape if you don't have to. You see, just working the tape down. Now for certain recesses like this one, which is very deep, it's going to rip, and that's fine, because later we're going to go ahead and do a black paint wash, which will bring out all the details, and actually having the tape ripped in certain places will help the paint stick to those details. But in other areas that you want smooth and smooth transitions, like let's say here, you want to work it nice and slowly. Kind of get that sucker stuck down. Now here's a really good example here. Now you're going to want to form this tape down into this area, so I'm going to start by just lightly applying pressure. You'll see it'll start to form down into that crevice, but I'm not nearly fully formed down there yet. So I'm just going to keep working the tape back and forth nice and slowly until I hit plastic. Now I've hit that base, and then I can kind of just slowly work my way down until I hit all the edges. And this is why it's key to have a plastic tool. If you had something metal or hard edge, like a butter knife or something, you're just going to catch and tear this tape. So that's all pressed down into those edges. Keep going. Now if you see you get wrinkles, if you just apply pressure and push down with something smooth, you'll push all those wrinkles right back out. And so I like using the side of a pen, or in this case the side of this tool, to get down into those areas. Once you have one surface stuck down pretty well, you're going to go ahead and need to trim it, because there's no way you're going to be able to wrap this whole thing in one giant contiguous piece. So get yourself a sharp knife or an Exacto blade, and then trying to keep tangent to these sides, go ahead and cut the tape. And I find it works best to actually start kind of in the center, so it's nice and supported, and then you simply slide back against these pieces. Now you're probably going to have to flip sides, because you'll have tabs and stuff that'll get in the way. But go ahead and cut this piece kind of as nice and straight of a line as you can around all of these features, like so. And then switch over, and then you can go ahead and come at it from the other side. careful because you got features that you don't want to cut off, like the rubber band hooks. And then for this front edge, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut it, but don't cut it flush because you're going to need a little bit of material to wrap up over this edge. So I just go ahead and just cut it with just a little bit of clearance. You're not going to be able to see this in this angle, but there. So I've cut it, but there's a little bit of extra clearance here on the ends that I can wrap over. And then take this piece and using the side of it, go ahead and smooth down those edges because you don't want any sharp edges sticking out. And then just go ahead and stick down all these side edges. Wrap these guys. And then you might have to do some more trimming up here at the corners and things like that. But you get the general idea. Again, smooth all these edges out. If you put pressure and if you apply pressure with the side of like a pen or at the side of your tool and really press down, you can smooth out a lot of the wrinkles and the bumps that will happen when you're going over complex geometry over these edges and such. And then once you have everything kind of smoothed out and down, you can go ahead if you need to do any more precise trimming. If you have some extra, chunks that are sticking out too much, you can just go ahead and cut those off, and then with a fingernail you can just go ahead and peel off any of those excess, and then make sure you get everything stuck down beautifully. Alright, so that's your first piece. Now what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to do two pieces here on the side, and then you're going to need to do one big piece here on the bottom. So for the side pieces, go ahead and peel yourself off another chunk of this. Fold this guy in half real quick. And then put it right down the middle. So then take another piece of your foil tape, peel this guy back, and stick it on the side. And then try to line this edge up vaguely with what you're going to need to fill in any gaps in the foil tape that you might have missed. And then again, same process. Push down with your fingers first to get everything preformed, and then move in with the rest of the tools. So as you can see, I've added two strips here to the sides, which cover these edges, and I've left them long enough and trimmed them so that they cover the tops of the hold downs. And just a reminder, make sure that you cut here and here on each of these sides, so you free up the little ears that eventually we're going to be putting some rubber bands over. You don't want to cover those up, otherwise they won't work as hooks anymore. So next thing is a big sheet here on the bottom. So with that, your main body is finished with this nice long piece in the bottom. I even did the main lock here. Remember to go ahead and clear out the hooks you're going to need for the rubber bands on your lock. But that's the main body. For the second tier, you go ahead and put one piece on the top, one piece on the bottom. You go ahead and trim them off so it follows the shape of the blade, and then using the pointy end of your tool, go ahead and conform down the foil tape around all of the little wibbles to bring those details out. So for this section here, what you're going to do is you're going to have one piece of foil tape that covers the top and wraps around the sides, and then you're going to have another piece that does the bottom. The reason why this is important is that if you have two pieces that wrap over the edges, you're going to get double the tape thicknesses on both these sides, and that's going to cause issues. So as promised, here's the first piece. Covers up to this particular line here. I did all the details using my fine point. It wraps over the sides but does not do the top. And then make sure you clear out for the blade locks and all of the rubber band connection points, and it wraps over and does 3 walls of this front side here, and then just another piece here on the top. So with everything silver and shiny, you just have to do a couple more things before you can start your assembly. Take a little bit of silver paint, or I'm using Rub and Buff here, and go ahead and coat your locks. So now you can go ahead and start your final assembly. Go ahead and put your blade into your other tier. Go ahead and slide that in. Make sure everything's still working smooth. If not, you're going to have to peel off a bunch of foil tape and do some sanding. Again, make sure that latch lines up with the correct side. Go ahead and take your back plate, jam that back in there, and then take your pin from earlier and go ahead and reinstall that all the way through. And then again, this time I'm going to go ahead and mash that all the way down, flush with the channel, and then clip that. Go ahead and add your rubber bands. Now, what you're going to need is some of these little orthodontic rubber bands. There'll be a link to those in the description. I get mine off of Amazon. Grab yourself a couple. So the first ones, these go ahead and hook over these front teeth here, and they hook under, these back teeth here, which you might have to guide a little bit because of foil tape. Then you hook them up and over this little side hook here. And then last, you have to go ahead and peel these guys up and over, like so. Do the same on the other side. So here's how to install your side locks. You put your paper clip part of the way through, and then you hook one of your rubber bands onto it, like so. You can just go ahead and pull that to the side and keep that up and out of the way. Then you back the paper clip back out part way, giving you enough room to put your lock in place. You just simply drop this in, and then you can go ahead and push your paper clip like that. So now you can see I got the rubber band on one side, I got this guy, and I got a space here. So now I'm going to take this extra loop of rubber band that I have here, and then I'm going to push that into this open space, like so. And get the paper clip back out. So you see it's kind of U'd over, and then you push the paper clip all the way through. And so now when I grab this back loop and pull, it is hooked onto this front. It's wrapping down and around and coming back out here. And then all you got to do is pull this guy forward and hook it on there. And then you just trim off this particular little pin again. And then you should see that this guy is all bouncy. So there is an alternate way to install on these side rubber bands. It's actually the way I use when I'm replacing a rubber band if something gets snagged and gets caught. What I go ahead and do is I take a little piece of string and I put that in on the back side of this paper clip, like so. And then using my highly engineered tool, I retrieve the end of that from inside. So now I got a rope that's wrapped around the paperclip pin. And all you do is take one of the rubber bands, hook it over the end of your string, and then just tie a knot in it. Like so. Boop. Got that. Then what you do, take the rubber band, hook it over the lock, go ahead and push it down the lock and hook it into that little notch that's in the lock, and then just pull on your rope and it will pull the rubber band all the way through. And then go ahead and separate out the two halves like so, and then you just clip off your little piece of string that you no longer need, and then you just do the same thing where you take this loop and you stretch it up and hook it over this little tooth here in the front. And just like that, you have an alternate way to put those rubber bands on. So whichever way you want to do will work. If you have all your rubber bands installed, everything should lock in both positions. Go ahead and close that guy up, and it works just like you would expect. So, last couple things. Next thing you need to do, get yourself a little bit of just black acrylic paint. Nothing fancy here. And then you're going to use this to pull out all these details so that all these details pop. And so all you need to do is just take a little bit of water, a little bit of your black paint, and then just rub it all over everything here. And then just wipe it off. I just use my hands, just like so. You see that? That brings out any of the sunken details that is in your parts. And then just continue this process for every little area of this guy. And if there's an area that you want some black lines on but the paint really won't stick, what you can do is actually just cut the foil tape, and that will give the paint enough purchase to actually stick, and it will help form, you can see some nice black lines there wherever you cut. So that's just an idea if you're looking to you know, you're not quite getting the black paint to bring out the details as much as you like. You can go and cut the edges. Now if you want to get black to stick to an area so it looks a little bit more dingy, what you can do is taking your smoothing tool, go ahead and just press down and bounce back and forth like so, and create some ridges. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like so. And then go ahead and flip, and 90 degrees from there, go ahead and put some more ridges down. Now what you can do is, using a little bit more of your black paint, just go ahead and paint the whole area. And then, very lightly, just clean everything off. And you'll see you should get paint to stick in those ridges a bit more, and then you can just clean off your edges and then let everything dry, It should stick down just fine. And then for the finishing touches, all you need to do is add another little piece of foil tape here on the back to lock everything in. And then the last thing you need to do is take a little piece of fishing line, run it up through that hole that runs right up the middle of your main lock and out the top. And then that's what you will use to activate your device. So the last few steps are exactly the same that I show in my hook blade assembly video. You put a little piece of foam right here. I just use some double stick tape. That keeps it nice and comfortable, keeps it straight, and gives the lock room to move and activate and deactivate. And then all you gotta do is put it on your arm. I use some shoelaces here to lash it to my arm. And then all I did is you just put it on the side of your arm with enough room so you can move your hand around, and then tie off your string or a piece of fishing line to a ring on one of your fingers. And if you're like me and you want some safety, leave yourself enough room so you can move your arm about, but then you can reach up here and grab the extra loop of thread. And just like that, using gravity, it will drop out, and then using gravity, you can close it back up.